Pope Leo has appointed a new bishop who has a pagan understanding of Catholicism, to put it mildly. The core concept you're going to wrestle with here is a concept called inculturation. It is often brought up today to defend these hybridized versions of masses that are being proposed for various places outside of the normally we think of Catholic parts of the world, what Pope Francis would call the peripheries. Prime examples of this come from some like the really deep into the heart of darkness of Africa, where you had like the Zaire use rite as one example, or more recently, the Amazon rite, which is a version of the Novus Ordo that incorporates pagan practices. These are deemed to be not problematic and not denying of the gospel. They're local cultural practices, but they are pagan in nature. And I am giving you a very biased take on this, obviously. We're going to go to the story, but I'm going to give you the definition of inculturation that the Vatican uses. So this comes right from their website. And the title of the document that this comes from is Faith Inculturation, issued in 1988 by the International Theological Commission. This is the Vatican's own document on it. And it's worth reading if you ever want to read a document from a little bit more saner times in the church. Definitely had the problems going on back in 1988, the Vatican. A lot of the same problems we deal with today were happening then. But still, things at least appeared more sane than they are now. But the document defines inculturation this way. Quote, "The process of inculturation may be defined as the church's efforts to make the message of Christ penetrate a given socio-cultural milieu, calling on the latter to grow according to all its particular values, as long as these are compatible with the gospel. The term inculturation includes the notion of growth, of the mutual enrichment of persons and groups, rendered possible by the encounter of the gospel with the social milieu. Inculturation is the incarnation of the gospel in native cultures, and also the introduction of these cultures into the life of the church." End quote. If it was merely the bringing in of new cultures into the life of the church, nobody would complain about it. But it typically involves bringing in cultural practices, and it's not a new thing. The Spanish did this in Mexico in like the 16th century. So it can be done right and it can be done incorrectly. What it looks like it's done incorrectly is when a bishop starts taking non-Catholic ideas and saying they are equivalent to core Catholic ideas of salvation. Okay, give you a good example. The headline from Gloria TV's en.news, Leo XIV appoints Madagascar bishop practicing local blessing rite Mitso Drano. This is not a Catholic blessing rite that he's bringing into the life of the church. It is instead a local pagan practice. Why is he doing this? You'll find out here from the article, quote, Pope Leo XIV appointed on October 25th, Monsignor Jean-Nicolas Rocojona, 52, as coadjutor bishop of the Diocese of Fianarantsoa, Madagascar. A coadjutor bishop is a bishop who is, strictly speaking, not the ordinary, but he is essentially being the apprentice to the ordinary, and when the local bishop retires or passes away, he will become the bishop automatically. He has already been approved to succeed the acting bishop. That's what a coadjutor bishop is. He was ordained a priest for the Archdiocese of Antananarivo on the 3rd of August, 2002. Pope Francis appointed him as auxiliary bishop of the Diocese of Morondava in 2023. Between 2011 and 2017, he completed a doctorate in theology at the University of Fribourg in Switzerland. His thesis is entitled Will of Fihavanana, a comparison with the observance of the Berit in the book of Deuteronomy. In it, he treats the Fihavanana, Malagasy concept of harmony, as a parallel to the biblical covenant, viewing it as a way of expressing divine relationships. He suggests that biblical interpretation in Madagascar should move directly from the Hebrew text to the Malagasy worldview, without mediation through Greco-Latin or missionary traditions. In other words, he is suggesting a hermeneutic of interpretation for sacred scripture that is divorced from Catholic hermeneutics. He wants it to be completely localized. If he was a Protestant minister, I would not care. I would not be telling you about this. But that is a Protestant attitude about how these things go. It's certainly not a Catholic one. We have a magisterium, deeply influenced by the Roman, Greek, and Judaic traditions, basically. And how did this bishop get this job? Appointed by Francis and then Leo. While Pope Leo was the cardinal prefect for the dicastery of bishops, deeply involved in that process. So yes, he knew who this guy was. He would have helped vet him for Francis. But it doesn't get any better here. The thesis also explains indigenous Malagasy religion, which involves praying to a supreme being called a Zanahari and invoking ancestors called Razana for blessings. In 2022, Monsignor R. taught interreligious dialogue at the Centre National de Formación Catechetique in Antanimena. Following his ordination as a bishop, the Monsignor accepted the pagan blessing of Mitsodrano at Morondava Cathedral. He accepted a blessing from a pagan. The gods of the pagans are devils. That's from Scripture. This was reported by the local Catholic Weekly. Mitsodrano literally means to sprinkle or pour water as a blessing. Elders appeal to both Zanahari, the god, meaning a pagan god, and the ancestors for cleansing and protection. Traditionally, an elder, such as a parent, grandparent, or clan elder, gives the blessing during significant life events such as departure, marriage, or assuming an important role. A branch or green leaf, often of Ravina Hasina, a sacred plant, is used to sprinkle the water. The person given the blessing offered wears a white cloth called a lamba fotsi. The white cloth signifies that the elder is set apart for a sacred purpose. The person acts as a mediator between the visible world, Tani, and the invisible realm, including the heavens and the ancestral realm. Just for those who don't believe necessarily that it's pagan, it is on its face pagan. The new bishop. I can't remember any good bishops that Pope Leo has appointed so far. Some will say it's only 5 months in, almost 6 months in. Give the man some time. He's had time. Most of his bishops have been political actors. In this case, he's got a guy getting. He's got men who consort with demons giving him blessings. But in the new synodal church, we are to dialogue and accompany with them, to treat them as if they are on a righteous path, that God has found ways to communicate to them through their traditions, and as long as they live according to the natural law, their traditions will be fine, because our God is a merciful God who will admit almost everyone to heaven, except for rigid clericalists, apparently. That is where we are. And now we got a bishop to match that attitude. Pray for his conversion. I have met priests who come from cultures where these ancient beliefs are still widely held, and they have turned their back on them and fully embraced the light of Christ. Maybe they should become bishops instead. Food for thought. Let me know what you think of this in the comments. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't. It does help. Sharing this on social media helps a lot too. And as always, pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.